Hey guys, Diane here, and today I'm going to be talking about all the books I've read this year so far. I'll just give a quick synopsis and my rating, a few thoughts about how I felt about the book, so stick around and we'll get to it. Okay, so this year I set a reading goal for myself of 50 books. Last year I think I read 30, so this year I was like, you know what, let me aim, I guess, kind of high and see if I can get through 50. So I'm just going to kind of take you through my Goodreads list. I have it here on my phone, so if you see me keep looking down, that's what I'm doing. I started my year off with None Shall Sleep by Ellie Marney, and this is they're tracking a serial killer who they thought they had caught, and come to find out there's a copycat or something. And this was kind of marketed to me through various people, like, oh, this is, kind of like Silence of the Lamb, a YA version of The Silence of the Lamb and Mindhunter, and which it was, but it was just trash. I hated this book so bad. This is probably the worst book that I've ever finished. And to be honest, I don't think I probably would have finished it if I wouldn't have had like a reading challenge, something kind of pushing me forward to finish it, because I hated this. I hated it so much. It was just so out of the realm of like reality. It was ridiculous. I hated it so much. I hated it. I hate to trash someone's like hard work. Someone created this, and but it just was just no. I gave that a 1 out of 10. I could have given it a half a star, but I didn't. I gave it 1. So moving on, the next book I read was The Kept by James Scott, and this has a really pretty cover. It's a cabin. It's like snowy, and this is kind of a revenge drama set in upstate New York. There's this family that gets murdered, and it's kind of a revenge story. The survivors are trying to find the people who did it. This book was fine. It was kind of slow. It took me a long time to finish this. I read it. I didn't listen to it on Audible, and it was fine. There wasn't like a supernatural element to it, so it wasn't anything that I was super excited about. It was more of a cover read, more of like, oh, I'll just on a whim, because I think I got it at at McKay's, which is like a thrift bookstore. So I think it was just a pure cover read, and it was fine. It wasn't anything that I was super into. I gave it a 4 out of 10. The writing was good, but it just wasn't really my thing. And then we have, let's see, then we have Gone to See the Riverman by Christopher Triana. And if you've seen any of my other videos, this is 10 out of 10. This book is amazing. It was so good. It's pretty short, and this is kind of about a woman, a very short synopsis. This is about a woman and basically her relationship with a serial killer, and she's kind of sent on a mission to the woods, and how that spirals into this like massive craziness. But this book was amazing. 10 out of 10. I loved it. It kind of kept me going, because the first 2 books I was like, meh, and then I read that and I was like, oh man, this was so good. Let's get to it. So then we have Near the Bone by Christina Henry. And this was a winter read. It's about a couple who's kind of secluded in a cabin in the mountains, and there's a creature kind of feeding on the people and animals nearby. That's a very short synopsis. But this book was pretty good. It was a fun creature feature. I gave it a 6 out of 10. It was just kind of middle of the road. It's probably not an author that I'll rush to buy again, but it was fun for what it was. And then we have Bone White by Ronald Malfi, and this was a really good book. I have figured out that I really like Ronald Malfi. He's a good author, and I gave him. Let me see. I gave this book a 8 out of 10. And so this is kind of about a guy. So he goes out to a town in Alaska. His brother has gone missing, and he goes out to this town. It's super ominous. It's almost like it's haunted or something. He's trying to figure out what happened to his brother, as well as some other people that have gone missing as well. So this was really good. I really enjoyed Bone White, and the cover was really good. That was another reason, something that it drew me to it. And it was a winter read as well. So I loved that. And then we have In the Miso Soup by Ryu Murakami. And I did a I did a review on this book too. I gave that an 8 out of 10. And just a quick short synopsis of that one. It's a sex guide who's giving an American tourist a guide of the sex life in Tokyo. And this book was really good. Like I said, I kind of already gave a review of it, so but I really enjoyed that book. Like I said, I gave that an 8 out of 10. And then we have Mexican Gothic. And Mexican Gothic, it's a Gothic horror story about a woman. She gets kind of a cryptic letter from her cousin. So long story short, she goes out there to kind of check on her, see how she's doing, see if everything's good. And her cousin had just gotten married. So this I gave a 6 out of 10. I wasn't a big fan. Like, it was good. It was fine. It wasn't anything I was super excited about. It was just, I had some big expectations, I guess, because if you've seen any, this book had just so much hype around it. So I was kind of expecting a little more out of it, but it was fine, whatever. And then we have Sundial by Catcher on a Ward. And Sundial is about a mom. She has a family, and she's seeing some very odd behavior by one of her daughters. So she goes out to her childhood home, Sundial, which is in the desert, and they're kind of trying to reconnect, figure out what's going on, and it gets super ominous and creepy from there. And this I gave an 8 out of 10. I really did like Sundial. I love Catcher on a Ward. She wrote one of my most favorite books of The Last House on Needless Street. But this one wasn't as good. It was good, but it wasn't up to par with that one. But I did enjoy it. And then we have His and Hers by Alice Feeney, I'm sorry. And this is a book I got in a book box. I probably wouldn't have actually chosen to read this, but this is a book about a woman. She's a reporter, and there's some murders kind of going on around her, so they're trying to figure out like what's going on. And this is like a thriller, I guess. It was fine. It wasn't. I gave this a 6 out of 10. Like I said, probably not something that I would have chosen to read if I wouldn't have gotten it in the book box. But it was easy, and the pacing of the book was really fast, so I did enjoy that. And then we have The Blade Itself by Joanne McCrombie, and I don't read a whole lot of fantasy. This is, I guess, marketed as dark fantasy, which in comparison to, dark horror, it's not as dark, but it is dark, I guess, for fantasy. And I gave that a 10 out of 10 because it was amazing. And with fantasies, it's a little harder to kind of synopsize, I guess, because there's just a lot going on. So this is about, it's got quite a few different characters, Logan Nine Figures, and kind of a power struggle, I guess. It's, like I said, it's a little hard to synopsize just because there's so much going on, but this book was amazing. I loved it. I read all 3 of them. Not back to back. I did kind of break it up a little bit. So after The Blade Itself, I read Demon King by Eric Henry Vick, and I gave that a 6 out of 10. And this is about a little boy goes missing. His friends are kind of trying to figure out what happened to him. And I heard that for fans that like it, they would love this. But I'm like, I wish people would really stop saying that, because it doesn't, like, a kid could go missing in a book and they're like, it's like It. Or if a kid is like murdered or something, like, it's like It. I'm like, it really isn't. And this one, it was good. I feel like I liked the beginning half of the book a lot better than I did the end, but there were some really likable parts in this book. Like I said, it was good. I gave it a 6 out of 10. It wasn't great. Probably not someone I'll really seek out. I probably won't seek that author out again. And then I'd have Before They Are Hanged, and this is the second book in the First Law Trilogy. So just kind of group all those together. It was, The Blade Itself, and then Before They Are Hanged, and then the last book is Last Arguments of King. And as a series, I would just give that a 10 out of 10. It was so good. It was so well written. In some fantasies, you get caught up in, oh, whose son is that? Whose daughter is that? Whose second cousin is the king's aunt? I don't know. But this one, it was like really easy to keep track of people. I mean, I did listen to it on Audible, so that also made it easier, just because the person who did who read the book was amazing. The narrator was amazing, and they would switch voices too, so it made it really easy to keep track of who was who. But I'm gonna do a video on that trilogy just because it's one of my favorite reads, so definitely have to give a synopsis of that one. And then we have Where the Crawdads Sing, which I did a video on this, so I'll link that, and you can, if you're interested, you just go to that video. And I gave that an 8 out of 10. That's a really good, fun, easy read. And then we have Brother by Anya Alborn, and this is a twisted, cannibalistic story about a family who kills together, and one of their sons is kind of having the realization of, like, what are we doing? You know, this book is sick and twisted, but it's so good. It's one of my favorites by Anya Alborn, and I also made a review video about this one, and I'll link that in the comments below. So that was really good. Loved that one. And then we have Verity by Colleen Hoover. And this is about a struggling author. She is offered like the deal of a lifetime to finish a very successful book series for an author who's now in coma. And so she goes out to her home to kind of look through her notes, kind of gather like her thoughts to see like how she's going to finish this book. And she also starts going through her diary, which she didn't have to, but she does. And it just kind of goes from there. And this is my first Colleen Hoover book. Probably be my last. It was just fine. It was okay. Everyone was like, this book is going to melt your mind and you're going to love it. And I'm like, no, it didn't, and it won't. And it was just okay. I gave this about a 6 out of 10, which it was enjoyable. It did move really quickly. You got through it fast. There's a little too much like sex in it, just because like, I don't know. It just felt kind of forced a little bit. I just didn't really like it. It was just okay. So then we have When the Reckoning Comes by LaTanya McQueen. And I was so excited about this book. I've been wanting to read this book for such a long time. So this is it's kind of a ghost story set in the bayou. And it's about a woman, her and 2 of her friends, they kind of grow up by this plantation. Some really crazy stuff happens. And then fast forward 25 years or however long, and her friend is actually going to get married there. And some crazy stuff goes on. Like I said, it's a ghost story kind of set on a plantation. So I had such high hopes for this book. I thought it was just going to be so good. And you really didn't get much of a ghost story. You got more of a kind of like a depressing drama almost. I didn't feel it. It was just okay. So I gave that a 4 out of 10 just because it was fine. And then we have Seed by Anya Alborn. And this is about a man and his family, and they hit something kind of like a hit and run. They hit some creature in the road one night, and it kind of spirals out of control after that. It set off like this weird reaction with his daughter, and it's kind of like a haunting ghost story. Not a ghost story, but it's a haunting story about almost possession a little bit. And this book is phenomenal. This is a 10 out of 10. If you've seen any of my videos, you know I'm Anya Alborn all day. And this was really good. The cover's good. The cover's amazing, actually. And the book is really good. It's relatively short. It moves really quickly. And it's just anything and everything you want in a creepy story. And then we have The Book of Accidents by Chuck Wendig. And this is kind of a story. It's a story about a family of 3, and they move out to a house that they've inherited, and it gets crazy from there. Their lives kind of start spiraling out of control, and they're losing kind of a sense of reality out there. And this book was, there were some really good parts to this book, and then there were some that weren't so good. It was kind of fell in the in-between for me. It was just okay. And then we have The Unpleasant Profession of Jonathan Hoag, which I won't go too much into this because I have a video kind of reviewing this book in more detail. If you want to, go to, it'll be linked. And this is by Robert A. Heinlein, and I gave this an 8 out of 10. This was such a fun break. This was a really good fantasy book. It's really short. I compare it to a Twilight Zone episode because that's just how it felt to me. Just fun and easy, and I loved it. And then we have If You See Her by Anya Alborn. Like I said, I'm her biggest fan. And I gave that an 8 out of 10. And I probably would have given this a higher rating if I would have been able to sit down and actually read it more cohesively, because we had family come in and I had to stop a few times, and I kept coming back to it obviously because I was really enjoying it. But when you take a break from a book for so long, you kind of get pulled out of it and you're not as into it as you were when you were consecutively reading it. But this book is really good. It's about a group of friends, and one of them is killed in a house. And so the two other friends are keep being drawn back to this house for whatever reason. They're not really sure why. And it's kind of driving them all insane. And this was a really, really good, fun ghost story. So that was a really good book. Then we have The Ruins by Scott Smith. And I also did a review of this book too. I'll link that. So that way, you know, if you wanted to see in more detail. But this is a pretty popular book, so you don't really, you probably already know what it's about. But I think I gave that a 7 out of 10. And then we have The Yellow Sign by James Hodge. And I think I gave this a 7.5. I'm kind of going back and forth between my Goodreads. And because on Goodreads, it's only 1 out of 5 versus the scale I do, which is like 1 out of 10. But I think I gave it a 7.5. And I really liked The Yellow Sign. It was short. Cosmic Horror Cult Read. I'll have that link for that video as well. And so yeah, I really enjoyed that one. And then we have, last but not least, we have 20th Century Ghost, which, as you can tell, I did a video on that as well, because it includes the Black Phone short story with the movie, and I kind of compared and contrast those two things. But 20th Century Ghost was good. There were some hit and misses. There was a few really, really good stories in there. Majority of them were just nothing to write home about. So I gave that a 6.5 out of 10, just because it was so kind of up and down. I wasn't, you know, it's just kind of in the middle of the road. So, but yeah, so that's all the books that I've read this year. Hopefully this list wasn't too crazy and jumbled for you to really understand. So if you like my list, if you agree, if you disagree, you know, let me know in the comments. I love talking about books, and, you know, hopefully I didn't just completely trash something that you're really into, but even if I did, let me know. So yeah, but if you like this video, please consider liking and subscribing, and we'll see you next time.